How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to an episode here on Let's Build Twitter. As always, I'm Ethan, our encoder, your favorite underqualified senior software engineer. As always, if you guys do want access to a private repository, there's a link in the description down below that'll walk you through exactly how to do that. With that being said, today we are going to continue working on the front end here. Specifically, we're going to go ahead and continue working on the modal here. We're going to go ahead and work on the content that goes in here and primarily fetching the conversations that you've already had previously. And this is what we worked on last episode, so we're going to go ahead and bring that in. So with that being said, let's go ahead and hop into the code and just get to work and see where we get today. So as I mentioned, we're going to be working on the front today, so we need to go into our source, and the first thing we need to do is we need to make a couple of changes to the CSS of our message modal top. So let's go into our features, let's go into messaging components, and then we need our create message modal top, which I believe will be this one. Let's see. Yep. So let's go in here and we need to just make a couple changes. So here inside of our top right, we're going to add some padding to the left. So we're going to go ahead and say padding dash left is going to be 8px. So 8px. And then we're going to go down here a little ways, and inside of our create message mode top, the next button active, we're going to add a margin right. So we can just add this basically wherever we want, but I added it about right here. So this will be margin dash right of about 12px. And then finally, we're going to go down a little ways farther to the bottom here, and we're going to go ahead and add a margin right to this guy as well. Doesn't really matter where it goes. Margin right, 12px. I don't remember what prompted me changing this, but I thought it looked just a little bit better. We can go ahead and just take a peek at what it looks like real quick. So it just kind of moves things in a little bit, because I think whenever I was looking at it on Twitter, it just seemed like there's a little bit more space involved here. So that's, I think, the reasoning behind this. So that's good to go. Let's hop back into the code and get to work here. So now we need to go ahead and open up our Explorer again, go into our messaging components. We need to go ahead and create message modal content slash create message modal content. This is going to be the focus of our episodes for a little while here. I'll go ahead and create the CSS, even though we're not going to be touching the CSS because we just had too much stuff to do this episode. But I'll go ahead and import it, that way I don't forget about it. So go ahead and import React from React, maybe. And we'll also import the // create message modal content.css, otherwise I'll forget. Let's go ahead and close out of that as well. So we're going to go ahead and just kind of set up a skeleton for now, that way it's there, and then we're going to go through and fetch our conversations and kind of display all the people we've had conversations with. We're going to say export const maybe create message modal content is a react.fc, and it's not going to take anything because whenever we get this all set up, it'll just be using our slice state and stuff. And here we will return, and then let's go ahead and return our div class name equal to create message modal content. And we're kind of setting up a skeleton here. We'll have a div inside here with a class name equal to, and this will be create dash message dash modal dash content search. So this is kind of be like a search bar. So in here, I'm just going to like put search bar as a placeholder, and then outside of our search bar, we're going to have a div with a class name equal to, and this will be create message modal scroll box. Inside of our scroll box, we'll have a div class name equal to create message modal selected user. So this is kind of going to be where the users that we want to add into our conversation with us is going to be put. So we're going to go ahead and say selected users, and then below our selected users, we'll have a div class name equal to create message modal, and this one's going to be conversation dash users, and then again this will be where all of our conversations are at. So I'm going to go ahead and say previous conversations. Now it's going to be work to be done here where we add extra logic in extra components and whatnot in here to kind of differentiate between people that we've actually searched for and people we've talked to previously. But for now, we're just going to go ahead and keep this so we can go ahead and bring in the logic for getting our previous conversations, and then we'll go ahead and come back through and refactor and get everything else working as well. Just trying to take step by step. That way these episodes don't get massively long. So now let's go and add this into our actual modal. So let's go into our create message modal. So now inside of our create message modal, we're going to have our top bar. I'm just going to go and clean this up a little bit because it's going to get a little bit messy as we work here. So we have our top bar, we'll have our content, and inside of our content, let's go and delete all of this stuff. And for now, we're going to have our create message modal content. And we could take a look at it, but we're not going to really see too much at this point. We're just going to go ahead and see some text that we put in there. But what we're going to go and do is we're going to go and fetch and set it up so we can fetch all of the conversations and kind of display the users we've talked to. But let's just take a look so I can show y'all what's looking like now. So we can see we have our search bar, we have our selected users, and we have our previous conversation. Eventually we'll get this set up so that there's some padding and this is like a specific length and all that stuff. And then we have a scroll bar. Like I said, we're making baby steps here. So let's hop back into the front end here. So next we need to go through and actually set it up to get the conversations and whatnot. And to do that, we need to go into the global interfaces and set up a couple interfaces to basically correspond with our conversations as well as our messages. So let's hop into global interfaces and let's just scroll to the bottom here. I just keep adding to the bottom. So these will be pretty simple. We'll have export interface and we'll go ahead and export a message. This is also just again going to be a skeleton. So we'll have our message ID, which is a number, and we'll have our conversation ID, which is a number. And I think we're gonna have to set up like a DTO for this. That way we don't have basically a infinite loop trying to get the conversation and messages, so on and so forth. You guys know what I'm talking about, but we'll get to that page when we get there. We'll also export interface our conversation, and in our conversation we'll have our conversation ID, which is a number. We'll have our conversation users, which is a user array, and we'll have our messages, which is a message array. So again, it's similar to our backend. We have to go ahead and just set up a skeleton message, and we'll get and set it up a little bit later. So now we're gonna have to get to like the bulk of the work here, and that is not refactoring but adding to our message slice, because we need to go ahead and add an async thunk to go ahead and fetch those messages, or not the messages, the conversations. So let's go into our message slice and get to work here. So firstly, in our message slice, we're gonna go ahead and set up a new interface to kind of correspond with conversation users, because whenever we're looping through the conversation users, we're actually gonna need the name and the profile picture and the ID obviously, but we need more information. So you're going to say interface, and this is going to be conversation user. Maybe this should have been in global interfaces, but I thought this was local enough to this to put it in here. Of a user ID, which is a number. Well, PFP, which is a string, which is going to be interesting. I'm not sure how that's going to work. We'll kind of have to deal with it. And nickname, which is a string. So now our conversation users, instead of a number array, it's going to go ahead and be a conversation user, and I'm also going to go ahead and delete that so it doesn't break. So then after our conversation user, we'll also have our conversations, which will be a conversation array. Then we'll also have loading, which we don't really use at this moment, but we might want it. An error, which is the same thing. We just have it because we're going to do some async thunks here. So now underneath our conversation users, we'll have conversations, which is equal to an empty array. We'll go ahead and have loading equal to a false, and our error will also be false to start. And there's going to be a couple things broken specifically with our conversation users, but we're going to fix that as we get going here. After this, we also want to go ahead and make a new interface here. So interface, and it's going to be our load conversations payload. This is how we're going to actually load them, because we need the user ID. So basically the user that we're fetching conversations for. We also need their token to know that they're authorized. So we need that stuff. That's good to go. And now we can go ahead and set up our async thunk, and then we'll also circle back, which we could probably just do this now. That way I don't forget. So like, for example, our payload action, instead of a number, which I don't know why this is an issue, but we'll go ahead and pass it a conversation user, and then the same thing, and we'll have to find where this is broken and fix it most likely. but we'll deal with that in a second. And then same thing here, instead of a payload action for a number, this will be a conversation user. And then here, we're going to actually go ahead and just pass the entire payload here because we might want to take some away and that might break some stuff. So we're going to go ahead and do that as well. We'll have to go through and fix a couple things. I'm sure it's broken right now, but we'll deal with that in a second. Below our initial state, I believe is where I want it. We're going to go ahead and say export const, and this is going to be load conversations. And this is going to be equal to create maybe async thunk. Inside, we're going to go ahead and name this message / load. And then we're going to go ahead and have async. And maybe message load is not the right word for this because we might actually load messages, but we can rename it if we need to. This would be async. The payload is going to be our load conversations payload. And we'll have our thunk API for if anything goes wrong. And here, we're going to set up a try and a catch. Inside the catch, we'll just go ahead and return thunk API.reject with value, and then E. And then inside our try, we're not going to do anything crazy. It's a const request is equal to, wait, maybe Axios.get backticks. And I'm sure there's a way to set up request parameters better in Axios. I'm just too lazy to research it because this works. Localhost 8000 /conversation and then / user ID equal to $curly brace payload.user ID. And then we'll go ahead and set up our headers. So we'll have headers colon, and then let's go ahead and make this prettier. We have authorization colon backticks bear $curly brace payload.token. Okay, and then outside of this, we're just going to go ahead and return our rec.data. So that is good to go. And like it's mentioned, we're going to have to go back through and fix up the things where we switch conversation users from just numbers. So that'll be something interesting. But for now, let's just go scroll down to below our reducers, which I believe is right here. We're going to go ahead and set up some extra reducers. And this is a builder and then an arrow function like so. And we're going to have a builder.add case. And we're going to add a case for load conversations.pending. We'll have our state, lowercase state action. And these are going to be very simple. So we'll have our state equal to ... state. We'll have our error to false and loading to true. Basically just reset everything for this. And then we'll just return our state. We'll have our builder.add case for our load conversations.fulfilled. We'll have our state and action. And here, once again, we'll say state is equal to ... state. Inside here, we'll have loading equal to false. And our conversations will be action.payload. An error will already be false because we set it to false whenever we were pending. So we don't have to worry about this error flag here. And then we'll return the state. And finally, we'll have builder.add case for load conversations.rejected. We'll have our state and our action. And here we'll just say state is equal to ... state. Our loading will be set to false. Our error will be set to true. And we will go ahead and return our state. That looks good to me. Now I'm gonna go ahead and check to see if and what is broken in regards to this to the update conversation users, as well as update open conversation, because I think there should be a couple things broken. So let's just double check this stuff. So because we are just passing conversation users here inside of open conversation and we aren't using the update yet for the conversation users, it seems like everything is actually okay for the time being. So that is good to go. So that means we can go ahead and go into our message pop-up and actually fetch these users whenever we load the application and then pass them along to our message modal content. So let's go into our messages pop-up, and in here we're just gonna go and set up a couple things. So first we need const user state because we need the token. So this would be use selector. This will be state, root state. We'll pass along state.user. And then we also need to go ahead and bring in dispatch. We'll say const dispatch is an app dispatch equal to use dispatch. And then we also need use effect, everyone's favorite thing to use incorrectly, including myself apparently, because you're not supposed to just call APIs whenever you load an application, but I don't care. We're going to watch for the user state dot token to change and for the user state dot logged in to change, because if we don't have the token yet or the user's not logged in, we can't make the request. So we'll just go ahead and watch for them to be logged in if they're not logged in for whatever reason. So say if state, and this should be user state dot logged in and user state dot token. So we know for a fact that they're logged in. We'll go ahead and dispatch, and we'll dispatch our load conversations, and inside our load conversations we'll have a user ID, which will be equal to user state dot logged in user ID, and then we'll also have our token, which is user state dot token. So now whenever our message pop-up loads, it'll effectively fetch that stuff. And I could try to pop up Redux, but it doesn't seem to work all the time on a private browser to show you guys that it's working. So what I'll probably rather do here is I'll just go ahead and set up the conversations to be displayed inside of our create message modal content, and then we'll take a look at it there, and we'll kind of wrap up the episode here. I know it's a little bit of a shorter one, but we got a lot of good stuff done here, and it was going to be way too long if I would have went ahead and added in all the extra content that I have for the next episode. So with that being said, let's go and hop back into our create message modal content and get the stuff displayed. Inside of here, let's go ahead and go to the top and get our message state logged in and get our message state pulled in. So we're going to go ahead and say const message state is equal to use selector. And then here we'll have our state, root states. And we'll go ahead and return state.message. And then what we basically want to do is we want to go into our modal conversation users. We're going to go ahead and add some curly braces. And inside the curly braces, say message state.conversations.map. We'll map through each conversation. And then we'll go ahead and return. We're just going to go ahead and return a div here, because this is also going to be technically temporary, because we're going to style this up in another episode later on. Haven't gotten this far yet. To be conversation users, and let me make sure I spell this right, dot map, and this is going to get a little bit messy. We're going to map through each user. We're going to go and just return a fragment, and this is just going to have the user dot nickname. Right, and let's see what I did wrong. I had this issue previously, and I don't know what the deal was. All right, I don't know what was going on. I got rid of the parentheses, tried it again, and it seems to be working now. Go ahead and save everything. If we go back into our front end right now, we're not going to see anything because we need to actually go ahead and create a conversation over on Postman. We don't have a way to create a conversation yet inside of our application, but we can go and look at the front end just to see. So we go ahead and open this guy up. You can see we don't really see anything, and we can't even tell if we're actually loading anyone. So let's go into Postman and create a new conversation or two just so we can see them pop up here. So over here in Postman, we can create one with us and Rick. Let's go and create one with us and like Morty, whoever 2 is. We'll do one with 3. Then we'll do one with 1, 2, 3, and 5. So we have a couple of conversations here. And hopefully I put this through enough tests and stuff that this also works. It seems like it did. So now if we go back into the front end and we give this a refresh, it should be fetching all of the users right now, or all the conversations that we've had. You can see there's been a conversation with Rick and Unknown Coder. There's been a conversation with Mort Dog, Unknown Coder, one with Summer, Unknown Coder, and then one with Rick, Mort Dog, Summer, and Unknown Coder. Obviously, what we're going to want to go ahead and do is get rid of our usernames from here. But right now, we're just kind of fetching the data and displaying it. And then eventually we'll go through and kind of make these our own like little user cards you can click on, and then it'll be added up here to the selected users and it'll be styled nicely. But I'm going to go ahead and call it for this episode. I know it's been a little bit of a shorter one, but if I would have went ahead and combined this one and the next one, just going to be probably closer to 40 minutes. Obviously, it would have been over an hour. It wouldn't work. So obviously, if you guys did enjoy, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe. Anything helps out the YouTube algorithm and I greatly appreciate it. If you guys do want to see where I started from absolute scratch to get to the point now, there should be a playlist either down below or linked somewhere very closely that starts out from nothing to this point right here. As always, guys, I appreciate you all for watching. This has been Ethan Unknown Coder. Have a great day, and I'll see you in the next video.